Hey folks, how are you all doing? Now, welcome to this free webinar, which is going to be talking all about how you can, um, is that one? So, you're talking about your podcast launch guide. Basically, this webinar is a nice little freebie. I've picked out loads of different bits from this podcast launch guide, which you can find on the website. Just click the QR code and you'll be able to go straight through to it. And I'm going to be sharing you over the next half hour loads of tips about how to launch your own podcast. After the half hour presentation, which was basically loads of slides from the actual course itself, I will then be talking to you about, I'll be answering any questions that you have about podcasting. Now, this could be where do people listen to podcasts? Is how do I launch my podcast? Which hopefully you'll have a bit more information after the presentation. It could be how can Grow Radio help you? Whatever it is, I want to answer your question. So it's half hour of presentation and then half hour of Q&As. If you want to find out more about it, you can always click on the QR code, which is just, as you can see, just there. But to be fair, for me, this is my chance to kind of connect with you guys and to give you as much information as I can. So, first of all, it would be really cool to know in the comments what you are looking for. What are you looking for out of this session? Are you looking to launch your own podcast? Are you thinking about how you fit in a podcast into your marketing structure? Let us know where you are in your podcast journey. And I know there's someone who's just put in a comment, you have just a black screen. Michelle, if you can just let me know if you can now see the screen, then that will be golden. And I apologies for arriving a little bit late into the studio. So we're going to be covering 3 different sections really. First off is forming your podcast idea. Then it's all about forming your podcast identity. And then we're going to be talking about how to market your podcast when it's actually launched. So this course is split into 3 different sections. 3 different sections. And good to know that we are all good and we are all live and you can hear and see me. Let's crack on because we've got a lot of stuff to cover. So the main bit about the podcast, which most people fall down on, is forming their podcast idea. Now, for me, having a solid podcast idea is the foundation of a podcast. Now, this isn't the way it looks. This isn't just the way it sounds. This isn't just the guests on there. It's everything involved in it. And it's got to focus on 3 different things. Number 1, it's got to fit into your business or your community, your business. If it's a marketing tool for your business, it's got to fit into your business. So it's got to be aligned with your business, your goals, your strategy. It's got to be launched at the right time so it doesn't conflict with anything else. With your business as well, it's got to kind of give value to whoever you want it to give value to. That could be your shareholders, that could be your suppliers, that could be your customers, that could be your audience online. You've got to make sure you have all these kind of set in process. It's also got to give value, and you also can consider your time. So put you in that center of the idea as well, because we all know when we get busy, it doesn't matter if it's business, if it's personal, the first thing that's going to go is the stuff that we don't need to worry about. And that's why fitting your podcast into your strategy is so important. So got to make sure you've got enough time to do your podcast yourself, or your team around you has enough time and energy to be able to do it. If they haven't, it's going to be dead in the water, because again, when times are tough, when your energy is low or your time short, your podcast is going to be one of the first things that's going to get knocked off probably. So you've got to make sure you've got enough time. You've got to make sure that you don't launch it at the same time as doing anything else in your personal life. So if you're moving and your energy is going to be focused on move instead of the podcast, don't launch the podcast. Launch it at a quieter time. But also think about what stuff you've got health-wise. How's your energy? How's your health? If your energy's low, your health's not very good, it might not be worth doing it. It might be worth holding on until you are slightly better. Or if you have different things that happen in your family that, again, going to give your attention away from the podcast, then maybe take a step back from the podcast. It's not life and death, the podcast. So let's just focus on what's important. So as well as making it fit into your business and your life and you also got to make sure it gives value to your community as well. And your community is so important, because they're the people who are going to help share and develop your podcast. So this is how you think about how they can get involved in it as well. This is all about them, you actually going to them and saying to them, what do you want to hear? What kind of topics do you want to get hit? Do you want to listen to? What kind of guests do you want to listen from? Now, once you've got all those bits, then you can put it into a nicely formed idea, which then will involve having your name, what artwork you're going to have, the music, the formats, and all of that kind of stuff. Also, in your idea, make sure you have a planner of what happens if you do get busy, or you can't carry on, or you just frankly fall out of love doing a podcast. How are you going to start? How are you going to finish the podcast as well? You've got to all fit all of those into the podcast idea. And I'll tell you what, 99% of people podcasts that fail because their podcast idea isn't solid enough. How do I know this? Because I've seen it. Over the last 10 years, I've worked with many different podcasts. I've coached loads of different podcasts as well, especially over the last few years with helping them edit as well. And it's the idea that they always fall down on. They haven't got a solid idea. If you work hard enough on your podcast idea, it's going to be absolutely solid and bulletproof. Now, there's 5 different podcast formats that people can choose from. These range from solo episodes where you just have one person talking all the time, to interview-based podcasts where you obviously have a nice mix of kind of voices. This could be a couple of people as a panel. It could be one person on one. That's the main typical podcast. So you've got your solo, you've got your interview based, then you've got your live kind of event, what I call the live event kind of ones, where you're covering a particular event. So this could be a particular time frame, or an event. So for instance, Great British Break Off normally has a podcast running alongside it when they interview different people. That will only run alongside it whilst that series is aired, or the Olympics, or Tour de France, whatever sporting event it is. There'll probably be a podcast that relates to it as well. So you've got solo, you've got interview, you've got event. You've also got kind of audio dramas and audio books as well. They kind of fit into it as well, which are their own separate kind of thing. And also you have got I've forgotten the 5th one, but it doesn't really matter. The main 2 types of ones you'll listen to are solo and interview based. They're the 2 main types. And what I would like you to do is, when you're thinking about launching your podcast, have a think about what your podcast format will be, and then think about, if I'm going to swap and change it to keep it kind of real, keep it fresh, then how would I change it? How could I change it? And it might be you mix 2 of them. So you might have some solo episodes. You might have some interview-based episodes. You might have an event-based one if it's related to your industry or your podcast. And you kind of flip between the 2. Now, the benefit of choosing your podcast format at the start, and then knowing that you can be flexible enough to change it, is that it's going to keep it fresh for you. As a podcaster, you want to make sure that you're doing some fun, cool stuff with your podcast. So mixing it up isn't the worst thing in the world. Solo episodes are great when times are short, when your time frame is short or your guest doesn't turn up. You can quickly change to a solo episode format. An interview base is great because you get 2 voices or 3 voices and you kind of bounce off each other. And then an event kind of series is great because, again, it just takes you away from the normality of interviewing people doing solo episodes, and you're talking about something, again, that will bring value to your audience, which is so important, like I said before, in the idea. But also it means that you can actually then kind of step back into the solo and interview with a bit more gusto, and it just keeps it fresh. I love changing the format, and I don't want people to be stuck in one particular format, because that's not good for you as a podcaster or your listeners who join you in your podcast. Now, this is a real common question that I get, the essential equipment for podcasting. And the main thing really I say to most people when it comes to this, and this is normally the first question that people ask, but it's not the most important question. The most important question is all about the idea, hence why I started this webinar with it. The equipment is a thing that a lot of people get het up about, get angry about, get kind of picky about, but actually it doesn't make much difference in terms of the actual podcast itself, if it's a success or not. What's really important is the idea. Essentially, for the essential equipment you need for podcasting is three things. You need something to record it on, you need something to kind of mix it together, and you need something to share it on. Now, anyone who knows my podcasting story knows that, 10, 12 years ago, I set up a podcast with just my mobile phone. That's all I used. That's all I had, to be fair, back then, was my mobile phone. I didn't have a laptop. I didn't have a mic. Didn't have a mixing desk. Whatever it was, I didn't have it. All I had was a mobile phone. And the truth is, you can do all three things on probably the equipment that you're watching this webinar on. If you're watching it on your phone, you can definitely do it. If you're watching it on a computer, you can definitely do it as well. I remember 10, 12 years ago, we weren't really familiar with Zoom. It was Skype, if anything. And Zoom, Teams, Riverside, StreamYard, whatever platform that you're doing it, if you're interviewing people online, it's made it so much simpler over the last 5 or so years. So remember, something to record it on, something to get your voice onto the computer itself, or onto the podcast. Now, that could be your computer. It's not going to be the best, but it will work. It could be a USB mic, which you can pick up for up to 100 quid, up to £100 even, which plugs into your computer. That's going to give you a good starting point. And something like the Blue Yeti by Logitech is a great starting point for any beginner's journey. And then you can upgrade it to a mic like a Rode, or that kind of plugs in there, which plugs into your computer, or a mixing desk. You can have a boom arm, so therefore it's not tied to your desk. So if you knock this, as you can see, it's moving slightly. Well, if you had a boom mic, the microphone wouldn't knock, for instance. And that's one of the things that you normally see kind of come in there, and you see the mic kind of on there. I love the brand Rode for equipment, but again, it's not needed right at the start. Now, when it comes to mixing it and releasing it, again, your computer will do the job, and how even your phone can do the job if you can upload it directly onto there. So you can see the essential equipment for podcasting is actually very minimal. And I compare kind of podcast equipment a bit to golf clubs. 9 times out of 10, they're just sitting in a corner somewhere, not doing anything, unless you use them regularly. And you can spend £1,000 worth of money, worth of your kind of money on podcast equipment, and it can just sit in a corner collecting dust, where actually it's not massively important to start off with. It's better to start with what you've got, and then you can build upon that after time. And how? After the 20th episode, if you really like it and you want to invest in a bit of equipment, get that nice mic, get that boom arm, whatever you want to do, get it. And obviously your equipment will change depending on where you record your podcast. If it's mainly done online, which a lot of them are, then you'll need that. If you want to go into a studio, you don't have to worry about even the equipment itself. You can just hire a place out for £100 an hour, or however much it is, and then you can just go in and let them do it. That's even better for you. And then you get the full studio kind of style, the aesthetics, and more importantly, the sound quality. But you don't have to worry about supplying any of it. That's golden, isn't it? Also, if you are recording on site or outside, you might need to invest on some clip-on mics to make sure that the sound audio is golden as well. But the main thing is depending on where you are, make sure you just start with the basics, and then you can work up on it. That's my main things. If anyone's got any comments or questions at all, please put them in the comments below, and then I'll either answer them as the slides go on, or I'll answer them in the Q&A afterwards. But please let us know what equipment you use as well. Now we come to the podcast identity part of it. This is where the podcast identity forms of three things: your name in your podcast, your music, and your artwork. This is all going to give you the right feel for your podcast, and actually tell people that this podcast is here and this is what it's all about. Now, with naming your podcast, you want to keep, these are just kind of some whistle stop tips for you. Make sure it's kind of short, sharp, and snappy. You're looking at 3 or 4 kind of keywords in there. If it's a business podcast, it might be worth putting your business name in there if you can. You don't have to have the word podcast. People don't need it. It doesn't really relate now, so don't worry about having the word podcast in your name. But make sure if it is your business, tied to your business or tied to something around your business. Could be an ethos, could be an idea, or your brand name as well. But make sure, it's around 3 to 4 words long. That's important because you're going to want people to remember your podcast, not necessarily, and they won't remember if it's got loads of words afterwards. When it comes to selecting the right music for it, just go with something quite personal or quite kind of representative of a podcast. So if it's a really high beat, really high energy podcast, you want some high beat, high energy music that gives you a bit of oomph at the start of it. If it's a bit more kind of calm, relaxing, or if it's talking about sensitive matters, then obviously you might want to go for some more chilled out, more sensitive, more kind of calmer music. For true crime podcasts, it might be a bit more edgy, a bit more kind of, a bit more edgy, it could be, or it could just be some background music that you want in the background when you start it. You selecting the perfect music is a real tricky and personal thing. So I'd say spend a bit of time on it, but don't spend too much time on it. It's not going to make or break your podcast. But what it is, it's going to add to it. It's going to add to the identity and add to the listeners' or viewers' experience as well. Make sure it's royalty free, or you're paying for the royalties if you need to. Please don't just take someone's music and not give them the credit for it. So the couple of website that I love is ilikemusic.com. Really nice and straightforward, but you can get some really good songs on there, which is for editing and production purposes, which is great. But make sure you are selecting the right music. You can get personal music, bespoke music as well. But again, at the start of it, unless you really, really want to, you don't have to worry about that. Then the next bit is you've got your name, you've got your music, let's make your artwork. Now, the artwork comes in 3 different parts, really. You've got your main profile picture, which is going to be for your main podcast, which is going to be full of podcast. Now, that's going to give its main podcast identity. Just like name, if it's for a business or links to a business, make sure it's got your brand colors, so therefore when you look at the podcast that's related to your business. Hence, on these graphics, I've got the pale green, the dark green, and the gold. Guess what? On my website, it's got the same colors. On the courses, it's got the same colors. Even down to having it on the name, just on my name, just there, and also on the banner that's going down there. It's all the same colors. Why? Because I want people to recognize these colors with that. So for me, this is all about making sure that your artwork is kind of consistent across all of the platforms. Now, if you are uploading it to different platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so forth, then each of them are going to have some slightly different guidelines to do. Now, the good thing is when you upload it to them, they will say if they meet or if they don't meet, and 9 times out of 10 it's all down to the size of the files itself. The size of the file's got to be below a certain point, which I think is 2 megabytes long, 2 megabytes big even, but the quality's got to be quite high. So I'd say 2,400 pixels or 3,000 pixels. And this main artwork is going to be a square. So therefore, when you go onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify, which I'm going to do just now, you will see that on here, you talk about these artworks just there. You are. Talk about these artworks just there. They're the ones. They're the ones that are your most important podcast asset, because they're the ones that people are going to share. Next up, though, is when you go on to different platforms, you can make different artwork for each of your episodes. So if you've got individual episodes that you want to promote, especially if you've got guests on those episodes, then make sure you've got their own individual artwork. Now, with these, you probably want the guests' picture to be on there. You want the name of the podcast. You obviously want it to be in the same kind of color, so people see the main artwork and then they see the episode artwork and they match together. But as well as the guest picture, have the guest name, have their business on there if it's important and it's relatable to the podcast itself, and then make sure you have maybe your details as well on there, or episode number. But that's not essential. It's handy, but it's not essential. So if you've got those bits on there, that's great. Then the last bit is maybe a wider wider profile kind of banner maybe that you can put onto your YouTube channel or onto your social media platforms as well as your background. And also, if you've got a video podcast, you might want to have it as your background of your video podcast as well, if you do change angles or change stuff, if you need it. But with all of this stuff, it's all about being consistent. Make sure that actually you have got the same brand colors, the same brand name. You have got the same font even, to make sure it's all consistent across there. And make sure that they are on the right requirements for the individual platforms. Apple Podcast is the trickiest. So that's the one that you need to make sure you're definitely on board with. Once you've got all that, you can start planning your first 12 episodes. Now, with all this, 12 episodes is a great way of basically making a plan for your show. And if you work in 12 blocks of 12, then that's golden, because if you think about it, there's 12 weeks in a quarter. There's obviously 12 months in a year, which means that actually if you're dividing your podcast into episode series of 12s, then that's perfect, because you can plan it throughout the year quite easily. Also, 99% of podcasts fail within the first 12 episodes. So by you making sure that you're working in blocks of 12 and you're going to your second block of 12, you're already ahead of most podcasts out there. So make sure you got a block of 12. Also, having a block of 12 means that you know how the series is going to kind of flow, and also you know what resources you need, how many guests you want to do, what solo episodes that you're going to be doing. Is it a particular event that you might want to cover? So therefore that can fit into the event, that can fit into the block of 12 as well. Always keep it on a rotating block of 12. Best advice I can give you. So once you've got the podcast identity sorted, you've got your idea, you've got your identity. Now it's about actually putting it out there. Now you can get it on places like Spotify and YouTube and Apple Podcast, all for free if you want to. And you can do, there's different podcast hosts out there that will help you with that. Now the podcast host is the main thing, because what you want to do is you want to basically put your audio file or video file now into a platform, and this is what a podcast host will do, and then they will share it onto Spotify, they will share it onto Apple Podcasts, they will then share it onto YouTube, some of them will as well, and then loads of different ones like Amazon Music, Pod Library, there's loads out there. The main ones you want to get your podcast onto: Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. They're the three main places. Amazon Music is a close fourth as well. And again, depending on where you are in the world, there's going to be different ones which are particular for your location. Podcast hosts are places like Spotify for podcasts. They are places like Podbean, places like Buzzsprout, places like Libsyn. There's loads of them out there. And I've just mentioned ones that I've used personally myself for me or my clients. But there's loads out there. The main thing is you only have to upload once, and then from there it gets shifted to all the different places. Okay, but at the start you have to set up all the links. But once it's set up, you don't have to worry about it. And that's the beauty of it. Now, YouTube might be the only place where you might need to upload it separate, because podcast hosts typically are just audio, not video. So therefore, YouTube, you would have to upload separately. But once it's up there, it's up there. And it's a golden library of your content. Once it's on the platform, make sure you keep consistently doing it. And that's also when the podcast idea comes into it as well. Show notes I put on here because nobody likes show notes, but they are read by people. So therefore, please, when you're looking at launching a podcast, work out what you want in your show notes. The main bits you need is a brief description of what it's all about, brief description of the guest if there is one, and some links for them to find more information, especially if you've mentioned those during the episode itself. And then if you've got sponsors, or if you want any blurb about your business, down the bottom. Nice and straightforward, but please still keep doing it. It's still important. If you've got all of that and you're launching your podcast, your launch date is quite surreal, really. And some people think it's a bit of a letdown, but some people think it's really cool because you've got all this stuff, you've kind of recorded your content, and you don't have to record all 12 before you launch. You can launch with 1, 2, 3, 5 episodes if you want to. I'd recommend launching with 3 episodes. That way, if people like the first one, they've got a couple more to listen to straight away. But let's say you've created 3 episodes, you've got them, you've created graphics for all of them, you've already shared them with the guests so they know that on this day it's going to go live. You've already plugged them into your podcast host and scheduled them to go out at a certain time. What do you do then? Basically, then you start telling people about it. You put it on social media, you record videos. You've probably already, I'm hoping you've already taken your audience on a journey to tell people that they know the podcast is going to launch on that particular date. If so, on the day, you don't have to really worry about it because people already know. But you still hammer home the message. You still put it on socials. Still record videos so you can put on Reels and on TikTok. You still put on LinkedIn. You put it in an article. If it's a video podcast, you might even share it as an event on LinkedIn as well. You can do that. So you want to get it out to the places where your audience is going to watch it and see about it and hear about it. And that's what the launch day checklist is. All of this stuff you can plan well before the launch day. And if you've got it all done, the launch day is literally just a tick box exercise of, have I shared it on socials? Yes. Have I shared the links with my guests? Yes. Have I made sure that each of the guests have got the artwork so they can share it? Yes. Is it on all the places that I want it to? Yes. Have you done a press release that you can send to the press to say that you've launched a podcast about this particular thing? It's been sent, or I'm sending it today. Now I've got the links. All of this stuff you can do. And in the guide, I've got a full checklist that you can work through. The main thing is the launch day should be a culmination of everything you've done. So that's why I say that for some people, it's a bit of a, relaxed moment now. Some people just right, let's smash it, let's get on with it. Both of which are completely understandable and completely fine. The main thing is that you've launched it. You really should congratulate yourself on becoming a podcaster at that point. And then you can start using this bad boy here. Social media is your king. This is where you can make a massive impact on your episode. From telling people when a podcast is released to sharing clips between then and the next episode, or sharing articles, or sharing questions, building a community around this particular type of content that you're sharing. Social media is 9 times out of 10 a free tool, so you might as well use it and use it to share snippets of the conversation. You can use software like Opus Clips to basically put your video podcast into it, and then it will come out, it will separate that into 20 odd different clips. Also, you can put text over the top of it. You can just leave it as it is if you want to. You can change the format so it's just in real, so it's on portrait, or you can do it in landscape. Whatever size you want, they can do it. But using social media for podcast promotion is a great free tool which most people need to do more of. And this is the kind of stuff that when you're launching a podcast, you might not even think about, because you're still thinking about, what's it going to be? How often am I going to release it? Or, by the way, question to how often I should release it is, how often do you think you can release consistently an episode? If that's a weekly, great. Fortnightly, great. Monthly, great. Make sure it's consistent and you can keep to it. But use social media to bridge those gaps, because that way you can really make a lot more of your podcast. And if you've got a guest on your podcast, that's multiple opportunities that you're going to have to shout about the guest. Multiple opportunities for the guest to share your content. This is, golden stuff. You can really do that. Not to mention, you can use the comment section as a Q&A for the guest if you want to. And also, it's a great place to for great networking opportunity for the guest and for you to really kind of strike those conversations up. You'll never be short of content if you start a podcast on your social media platforms. And then if you've done pretty much all that, you can pat yourself on the back, because you've done a lot more than what most people would when they start a podcast. Because it's true that you can start a podcast in literally 5 minutes or so if you wanted to, but it won't work. It won't work for you. It won't work for you, your business, or your community. And that's what I want to kind of circle back to. When you're starting a podcast, it's all about focusing on giving value to those 3 people. Focus on your community, and they'll give back so much. Make sure it's in line with your business, and you'll make sure that it's not going to be just something that's just we do, but it's just on the side. It's part of your marketing strategy. And make sure it gives value to you. What are you going to get out of it? What connections are you going to make? What skills are you going to learn from doing it? And if you can work on all those, you're going to be absolutely spot on with your podcast stuff. Okay. And that is pretty much bang on 30-minute presentation. I've covered a hell of a lot in that kind of 30 minutes. So I'm now going to throw it over to you in terms of the Q&A questions. So if you have any questions about podcasts, about launching podcasts, about me knocking my table, or anything to do with podcasting, please put them in the comments. I'm going to pop onto LinkedIn on my phone so I can see if there's any comments on there, because they don't come through on my screen here. But please let me know of any kind of comments you particularly have. I'm going to see if there's any questions on here. Turn down the volume because nobody needs to see me to do that. Cool. So on LinkedIn, there's no comments, which is golden. So that's perfect. It is. If there's any comments on YouTube, I will double check, because again, I'm not sure if YouTube will go onto here. Some of the main some of the things that I haven't touched upon, which I could touch upon, are questions like how much does it cost to how much does it cost to launch a podcast? And the answer is, if you've got the equipment, it can be free. It can be free. There are free podcast hosts out there which will get you started. It might not give you all the functionality that you need to do, but actually, sometimes you don't need all that functionality to start off with. Sometimes you just need to get started. As long as the podcast hosts does take you to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, you're onto a winner, to be honest. And with the people who aren't going to get it for free, podcast hosts typically charge between £8 to £10 a month. So it's not going to break the bank. It's not going to break the bank. And if you've got a podcast and you don't need to invest in any kind of equipment at all, then actually that could be quite handy. The cost is something that a lot of people are worried about. They think it's expensive, but it doesn't have to be. The USB mic, £100 for a Blue Yeti mic. If you're looking for the full mixing desk, boom arm, microphone that you can see, or a full studio setup, then you are looking a lot more. There's various studios across the country that people can kind of rent out, and I think I mentioned £100 an hour. It's not. Some places are cheaper than that. Some places are more expensive than that. But it depends on what kind of feel you want for your podcast. If you want to spend that much money, and also spend that much time actually in one place recording it. Some people just start the idea of just jumping onto their computer, jumping onto StreamYard, Zoom, Riverside, and just recording. And if that's the case, then that's golden. It is. Remember, if you've got any questions, please put them in the comments below. If there's no questions, I'm going to make a move. But the main so other questions I normally get is who's actually going to be listening to it. And the truth is, a lot of people, and when are people going to listen to it, and where are people going to be listening to podcasts? The main, and to answer that, is it depends on who your audience is and what your podcast is all about. If you've got a podcast which is for a particular niche and you know that they're going to be commuting at a certain time, that's probably when they're going to be listening to it on their commute. And most people listen to their podcasts in a car commuting, when they're walking, might listen to it in the gym, might listen to it when they're doing some housework or doing some gardening. They honestly, a lot of people kind of do that. Dog walks are also a popular way of time to listen to podcasts. So that's some of the places where they do. Now, in terms of who's going to be listening to your podcast, it depends on who what topics you've chosen your podcast to be about. And with that, it depends then on how you've marketed it. You want to basically, when you're marketing your podcast, you want to get your podcast into the eyes and the ears of people who you think is going to give value to. So share it on the platforms they hang out on. And if that's LinkedIn, double down on LinkedIn. If it's Facebook, double down on Facebook. If it's Instagram, TikTok, great. Clips are a great way of getting people hooked into a podcast, because you'll see a couple of clips come across your feed. And if you like them, you'll probably see more of them, and then suddenly you're watching a few of them, and then you listen to the podcast. That's happened to me in the past, and that's a great way of using clips to use that as a discovery tool for your podcast. But there's some of the other questions that people ask. I'm not sure if there's any more questions. There's no questions coming along here. But remember, click on the QR code if you want to find out more about the podcast launch guide. There are other courses available as part of the podcast toolkit, which is all basically this is the whole training courses that I kind of hold. And in there at the moment, there's the podcast launch guide. There's one about being a standout guest as well. So if you're looking to be a guest on a podcast but don't know where to start, check that bad boy out there. There's also one in particular for children's activity providers as well. So if you are a children's activity provider and you want to know how podcasting can work for you, then check this bad boy out. And that's the live courses at the moment. I have got several other courses launching next year. I've also got a week-long celebration of podcasting called Grow Live. That's going to be happening in September. More information to come about that. But if I've got no more questions, I'm going to leave it there. So thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, click on the QR code if you want to find out more about the podcast launch guide itself. And take care, everyone, and have a good day.